something as Pākehā as ownership of the foreshore and seabed
is because this is Māori property. This is guaranteed. It's our land. Whether the land is covered by sea or water, or whether it's land, dry land, the deal was that we could have our lands and our estates for so long as we wished to retain them, right? Yeah. Now, we've never alienated the foreshore and seabed. That's what people have to understand. That property, which was ours at the signing of the treaty, has never ever been alienated. And what this government proposal amounts to is essentially a taking away of that. Some have called it a confiscation, and I would too. It is the potential confiscation if they continue down the track that they're doing, because it's never been alienated, it's never been willingly alienated, right? It is our property.
Your right in principle to it has never been extinguished.
Well, in practice, I mean, the Court of Appeal decision basically had said that there existed Aboriginal rights or customary rights that existed, property rights that existed at the time of the treaty, and at the time the British Crown came to New Zealand and the agreement was made as far as the treaty was concerned, and sovereignty, ability to govern. But the ability to govern and sovereignty in the country didn't mean that you took away those property rights. I mean, the government doesn't have to govern. In order to govern, it doesn't have to own all the land in New Zealand, does it?
It doesn't.
So why would it have to want to own the entire foreshore and seabed?
To stop somebody else owning it and selling it.
To take it off Māori.
Although attention's been drawn to the foreshore and seabed issue in recent times, debate regarding the ownership of our coastline has a very long history.
This is not a new issue for us. In Hauraki, we've been dealing with this issue since 1868, 1869, when the government first tried to take the foreshore and seabed from us. And so ever since then, we've been protesting, we've written letters, we've made submissions to the Select Committee. We've done all of those things, and that's a continuation from then until now.
In 1868, due to gold mining in the region, the government made moves to put areas of the Thames foreshore into Crown domain. Local iwi wrote many letters of protest, including this submission to the Select Committee.
The word has come to us that you're about taking our places from high water mark outwards. Great is the grief, great is the sorrow, great is the objection. That is not the work of chiefs, nor is it just work.
Those sentiments that we expressed and our tupuna expressed then in 1869 are the same, pretty much the same sentiments that we express today, because nothing much has changed.
Iwi and Hauraki won a test case in 1870 when the Native Land Court granted limited titles to areas of their foreshore and seabed.
Now, the government didn't like that, so it did two things. First of all, it tried to buy up the titles. There were 44 titles covering nearly 1,000 acres between Thames and Tararoo, and it was all foreshore, and they decided they didn't like it, so they started to buy up some of those 44 titles. And the second thing they did is in 1870, they issued a proclamation under the Native Land Act at the time and said that they would take away the jurisdiction of the Native Land Court to be able to consider any cases relating to foreshore and seabed. And that's pretty much the same approach that the government uses in 2003, 2004. Very, very similar. I mean, to my mind, I just see history repeating itself.
Grant Powell represents 8 iwi from the Marlborough Sounds, who in 1997 lodged a case with the Māori Land Court to assert their customary rights to the foreshore and seabed of their region. After years of legal battles in various courts, the case finally reached the Court of Appeal, and a decision was released on the 19th of June 2003. The Foreshore and Seabed Bill is the government's response to that decision.
The decision of the Court of Appeal was very simple. It didn't say that Māori specifically owned the foreshore and seabed, simply said that the Māori Land Court had jurisdiction to determine whether or not the foreshore and seabed of the Marlborough Sounds was Māori customary land.
The Foreshore and Seabed Bill relates to the marine area bounded on the landward side by the waterline at the mean high spring tide, extending on the seaward side to the 12 nautical mile limits of the territorial sea. It also includes the air and water space above and the subsoil and bedrock below.
The current position is that we don't really know who owns the foreshore and seabed. There are a number of statutes that say that the Crown is the owner of the foreshore and seabed, but all of those statutes have been found by the Court of Appeal to be subject to an investigation of what Māori customary rights may exist. So until an investigation has taken place, the Crown cannot assert that it is the owner of the foreshore and seabed.
This is 3 News with John Campbell and Carol Hirschfeld.
Kia ora, good evening. It was meant to be a day of consultation. Instead, the government's first hui on the seabed and foreshore ended in acrimony. A group of Labour cabinet ministers were labelled thieves, and one Ngāti Porou Kaumātua told them they had no authority to extinguish Māori customary rights over East Coast beaches.
There weren't many protest banners, but the message was clear. The government ministers faced the welcoming protocol, yet today it was delivered with sting. 300 Ngāti Porou of the East Coast were at the hui, and they weren't happy with the government ministers arriving late and only planning to stay 4 hours.
Te kōrero anō hoki kia rātou, ana kei te haere mai koutou ki te muru. Io mātou mana tukuiho, mai rāno. Engari kaunti a koutou te muru, kei te hara mai anō te wā ka hia koutou, ki te tuku mana motuhake, ki te hunga e hia ana ki ngā kaupapa marine farms.
Ngāti Porou still own 90% of the coastal land here.
We have never denied access to anybody along our foreshore, on our foreshore, to enjoy the beaches on our sands. We have never, ever denied access to anybody.
Hoi anō kia huri atu tātou I naenei ki te whakarongo ki ngā kōrero a Joe Glenn mo tēnei kaupapa. Tēnā koe e Joe.
Kia ora, Scotty.
E hoa tēnā koa kōrero mai rā I ngā huatanga o te hui I te rānei. I arohia te hunga I tai atu ki te whakatakotoi o rātou tautohe pērā I te rōpū te mana ātai?
Me ki pēni te whakahaere atu hui I te atani paukoto te me ki ngā haora e rua te tīmatanga o te hui ngā whakawhitiwhiti kōrero ngā mihi a te haukainga ki tō rātou manuhiri. Muni mai o tēnā katu mai ko te minita mō ngā take tiritia Margaret Wilson engana I tūkei mai ki roto te whare nui. Ka pāniu mai runga ngā te ho ngā tapu o reira ki ngā hunga e nohora ki waho. Ko tā rātou kaupapa me ki he kaui te pūrongo nei. Koe reta mahi a te minita I te rāne, te taka o te hui, he ata whakamānama ngā rārangi I kōrero oroto.
E Joe, e whahaora anake I whakaritea mō ngā kōrero a te hui nei, ki tāu titiro I ea te katoa o ngā kōrero I roto I aua haora e whāra?
Ki tā whakapono I tō mātou uhenga mai, muri mai o te haoro te tina, kāre anua kia tatu hāwhepea o te ripoata I te minita I tau owa. Taku whakapono e kore e o tia rātou I roto te tēnei rā, mo te tai rāwhiti.
Hea e tahi o ngā take kāri I pai ki ngā taringa o te kāwanatanga?
Kāri tai ki tērā takiwa o tērā wahanga o te hui I tēnei wā hoenau, kia kene au ko te nuinga o te wā o te minita tonu o ngā take tiriti e āta whakamāramana ngā rānangi kōrero ngā kupu kai roto I tā rātou pūrongo e kiana ko rātou ngā kaitiake o ngā takutai moana. Ngāti Porou will continue to scrap with the Crown. Ngāti Porou will tell its future generations that there is still a battle to be fought. The battle has just begun.
Opposition to the government's foreshore and seabed proposals gathered momentum today at a national hui in Blenheim. What has until now been quiet rejection of the government's plan became deafening and unanimous opposition, with a warning that the Māori vote cannot be taken for granted. And Māori MPs were issued with the same ultimatum: support an alternative Māori plan or be replaced.
Iwi representatives delivered a strong message to the government and other political parties present. The Māori vote can make or break any government, they said, and if MPs do not represent Māori interests, then the people will give their votes to someone who will.
E hari te mea ko tahi noi ho te take I roto I te rohe o te tai tokerau, he whakatau ma te mema Māori a Dover Samuels I tēnei wā, I roto I tana hui tuatoru ki ngā iwi o taua takiwā, I rongo ai ia ara no atu e tahi take he whakatau māna, I tu atu I tērā mō ngā taku tai moana, ko tētahi o aua take ko ngā mā harahara nui o te iwi ki ngā ture e hanga I ana, e ngā kaunihera me te tari o te papa atawhai o taua takiwā, kei a hireni henare ngā whakamārama.
I raro tonu I a te whiria te maunga tapu o ngā puhi. Whāroa atu ki ngā takutai o hoki a ngā whakapau krakia, te whakatau a ngā ti korokoro kia Dover. Ka hore te mema I akia ki ngea e te kino, e ngari anō a Doc me enei kaunihera. I runga te mema e nohoana I ngā tau nei, me ngā āhua taiapa hoki a te Pākehā I ngā taha moana.
Ka mātou kia koutou, a te tātou ki te whakangawhi ngā. Ki ngā whenua ngā Pākehā, e whai kia na ngā keti e tēnei wai. A pa pueri heu era.
Ko tau iwi te ramatira. Tīmata mai te papa hata whai. Me ngā kamupene tia ki wāhapu nei. Me ngā kaunihera ārohe. Kia rātou te nuinga o ngā whenu. E pāhi nei te kato. Kia tai atu, kia haere atu ki ngā ātaha moana.
Koe te rako taku tino pātai, eha ngā mea whakahokia mai ki a tau ki te Māori. I te mea ko whakae taua nā me tuku te katoa ki ngā taha moana. Nā mea nau whakahokia mai o tātou tika, I tuku nei honei o tātou tūpuna ki a tātou.
I whakaohongia anō hoki ngā hinengaro. I muri I ngā kōrero, ko te komitiranga hauke a te kāwanatanga, te kaiwhakawā I ngā hiahia o enei hui.
Koe tēnā ko te naue, ka tukuna wini kōrora katoa, ke haere kihia. Haere ki ana ki tērā komitira, me te hiahia te tumanako, ke tika maori ki ngā tangatunga tērā komiti. Ina kore tika, mau tāme wini kaupapa, e kore ki te pai.
Puta te tahi kōrero ia te tahi o ngā kaumātua, te tahi o ngā ahua e mata nei tātou ko ngā tāra te Pākehā ki hia. Koe tēnei ko te ahua e patu nei o tātou.
Ke tino mohi o koutou, e koe a Ngāti Kahu ki hia.
I roto I ngā whakāturanga pikitia a Ngāti Kahu, I kite te mema ki ngā ahua mōrikarika o ngā whakahaere a Doc me ngā kaunihera o te tai tokerau.
Mōrikarika ngā whānau me ngā hapu o Ngāti Kahu. No reira te kōrero hakahokia mai te mana hakahaere mō wēnā wāhi katoa. Puta no I te takutai moa no Ngāti Kahu me hakahoki ki ngā whānau me ngā hapu.
E he ana tēnei, kia tēnei te poto o te wā e whiriwhiri ngā takene.
Ore kau mātou e hakae ana ki te mea menga nei government proposal.
The Deputy Prime Minister was forced to abandon today's hui on the foreshore and seabed issue after a warning his safety and dignity couldn't be assured. The sixth hui in the series was to have been held in Whangarei, but it was called off by Kaumatua, who said the level of anger against the government meant it wasn't safe for the Minister's party to come to the marae.
There's just a large crowd in there. They're not going to give way to the government coming in.
Come inviting themselves into our marae with the excuse of consulting with us when we all know that that's not the case.
The government has completed the last of its consultation hui over the foreshore and seabed, and for the 10th time out of 10 hui, those taking part rejected the government's proposals, and they challenged the government to take notice of the alternative ideas being put forward.
Much to my great sadness and great disappointment, I find myself having to do what my ancestors were doing, fighting to try and stop people stealing land from us.
Koe rātou I te mea mai kia tango e te mana o tau o te Māori. I te mea ko taua ngā tangata whenua.
Kaha ana rātou ki te tahai mai rāno. E mai tonu rātou tēnei mai. Kia hau ko te mea kē, ko te mea nui kia tāo te Māori kia tū tonu tātou. Kau e tātou e noho kore take I te taha. Nā te mea kē, he take tēnā nui ratu tēnei.
Koe anei I puta I te kōkiri. Kia kore rawa taua hunga o te ana o ngā raiana, e tukua hei whakangoikore I tēnei hīkoi. Tōku nei wairua mo tēnei hīkoi ka reo I hia kia tai te hoki pōna ki harirui ki a tātou tangata o te Parliamenta, nā tangata Māori o nā tātou nei haka haua tiki reira. A reo hia nei mā rātou haka ngoi kore te hīkoi.
Ko tau hia ana hang, me peha.
Hoina ki reira tātou kororo ai, a kororo tui ki te Pākehā, tō tātou hia.
There's a movement on the street. People moving to shuffle to the beat. I hear them talking on the street. Words like freedom from oppression, 'cause that's what my people need. So when you hear me,
Kia toi tēnei haora tonu ko whakaeke mai te hīkoi nei ki runga tēnei marae o te o hāki mo te pō. A pōpō ko hīkoi ngia ngā triti o Kaitaia kia tae ki te marae o Mangabuka. A te rāhoroi ko whakaeke atu ki te marae o te rapunga ki Waiomio ki roto I ngā te hine. Rini hena tēnei atu iahi para mo te karere.
Ko tēnei te rā tuatoru o te hīkoi whenua, ko whakaingoa nei whakamana I ngā take o ngā iwi Māori ki ngā taku tai moana. I tai te ope hīkoi ki te pā o hone heke I kai kohekohe.
Hei, ko ia te tahi tangata whawhai mo ngā whenua, ngā tau, ngā tuku o rātou mahi. Ko ia ki ka timatai te rōpu taiaki ki kone I te honere hoki I tēnei ngā rangatira hone heke. Ana, tai mai, a me te mohe tunu mo te taku tai moana, ko ena ngā tino taonga I whawhai tia wa tātou mātou tūpuna mai rani.
Kei konei tātou I tēnei ata, kia whenui tō tātou tūpuna. I mati tō tātou hīkoi ngātu I konei, I kai koe.
Atu I te kāinga o hone heke, I heke te ope nei ki te taone o kai kohe.
A ko te take hikoi ana hau kia mau ki ngā tikanga kui mā koroma. A ko tērā te tino take a hakoa he kaumātua, he kuia, he rangatahi. A ko tai mai a hau ki te tautoko te kaupapa.
He tāhai no iho ngā mahi o te kawana. Ai, ko tērā te take o te hikoi o a hau me take nei whānau.
Kai roto koe taku puta, he puta aha te puta, he puta tohu te puta, e rua nei o ku puta hi. Koina te wāhanga o tētahi o ngā haka whawhai o ngā puhi iwi. Nā I tēnei rā I taeke ki te pā a hone heke kia karakia I reira. Tēnei wā kua taeke ki roto I te puku o te taone kia puta tēnei kaupapa taku taimoana me te u o ngā iwi o ngā puhi ki ōna taku taimoana.
Te hiki I te taetanga atu o ngā kaiporo te hinei ki whangārei te renga prāwa.
I ngā moe I ngā wawatai ngā moe hewa o te iwi mai tere renga wairua ki raro I te take o pari ki ore e tū nei, o pari haka e tū mai nei, o manaia e tū mai nā, I te wahapu o whangarei te renga prāwa, nau mai, piki mai, kake mai, hare mai. Hare mai me ngā mate kei runga I a koutou. E pikaua mai ana mai tērā wehenga o tātou I roto te renga wairua, kia tae mai ki roto I te tauwhanga nui a rei tui a rei pai e hora nei. Tēnei te hariake nei e te tuahine e ti. Kua tae mai nei koutou te whānau e pīkau ana I ngā wawata.
Ka ki te hau horakau o tātou mate hoki ana ki te hau kainga. Haere mai ki te awhia koutou. Kia mutu tēnei hīkoi. Ka huri rātu ki te rerenga wairo ka whiti atu ki te rātaha. No reira haere mai rā.
Ka tahi te honoroi nui. Kau taina ki runga I te tamaiti nei, a kāhi harawira ko te pupuri I te karahaki o te hīkoi.
Te mea nui kia hau kia haere ki pōneke, ki te hīkoi ki pōneke.
Mō ngā tikiriko o tea, he take nui me tau toko kā tika.
Hakoa e meananga mema Māori, kau e hīkoi. Ore kau he tangata e tautoko ana I te kaupapa nei, ngā me tiro hia koe. Kei konei te tini o ngā iwi, ke konei ngā rōpu aiwi, ke konei te rōpu wahine Māori toko i te ora, ke konei te kaunihira Māori, ko ngā tāngata anake kore tai mai ko ngā mema Māori.
Ai te ahi tonu nei e neki ka takatū atu ki te raki pai whenua i tā maki makaurau. Hai a pōpō, ka whakawhitihia, ko te moana o wai te mata. Ko te karanga e neki, hara mai ki te tautoko i te hīkoi, i runga i te piriti o a karana. Mai hini kora te karere.
The long walk arrived in Wellsford this afternoon. But a few hours later, the walking shoes had been replaced by vehicles for the drive down to Auckland, where these protesters face the most controversial part of their journey to Parliament.
From tomorrow, the Hikoi will cause a potential gridlock here on the Harbour Bridge, with 2 lanes closed from 10:30 in the morning until 1 o'clock, so protesters can cross the bridge by foot.
All my life I get told about the right of the great right way. I said, how much longer before we get up and say what people maranga ke ai ai ete we maranga ke ai. I said it soon come down. No more knocking on those doors. I said, Māori people, gotta wake up, gotta take up the course. Can you feel it coming? A brand new time. I said, Aotearoa, maranga ake
This affects all New Zealanders, call all New Zealanders, not just Māori, but every New Zealander. But if the Crown has the foreshore, what's the problem? They'll privatise it. They'll privatise everything like they did in 1984, Paul.
Wake up, people!
On the other side of the barrier, the predicted gridlock never happened. Traffic was steady, but authorities say drivers used their common sense.
People listened and stayed away, and so we were able to cope with traffic both north and south with 3 lanes in each direction with minimal queuing, far less queuing than we would have had in an evening peak hour on a typical day.
The Hikoi then took its message to the scene of another symbolic protest, Bastion Point. They'll be staying here overnight before resuming their journey to the Beehive. Donna Marie Lever, One News.
And tonight, many of the Hikoi members are dining at Auckland's Orake Marae. And our Māori Affairs correspondent, Tini Molyneux, joins us from there. Tini, we saw some familiar faces in that item, but does the Hikoi also have support from grassroots Māori and, in fact, Pākehā?
Well, yeah, there were those familiar faces, Judy, but today they were joined by a large number of conservative Māori. And by that I mean Māori that would normally have crossed the street rather than walk shoulder to shoulder with these familiar faces. But, you know, there were 85-year-old women with walkers, there were children, there were Pākehā, there were Pacific Island, there were Asians, and there were even people who joined the march from the wrong end of the bridge. There was a lot of singing, and there were those scary moments. I'm a Bay Plenty girl, I'm used to the earth moving under my feet with all the earthquake tremors they have down there. But when that bridge started to sway, it did cause a bit of concern with quite a number of people. But they were well briefed on what to do. And yes, so they continued on their way. But I think the most visible evidence today, Judy, was that the people were a lot more united. They showed a lot more unison than they did during the 19 foreshore and seabed huis that were held earlier this year or last year.
No te ata tonu nei, ko te poroproa ki te tira haere nei, e ngauri o wai pārei rā. Ki te papa o wao tea, ka peka e tame iti mā, ki te pā nei, me te whakatairanga i ngā pūtake o te hīkoi takutai moana. No te kenga ki manukau, re ana te ihi, te wehi, me te mana, e ngā whakatipuranga manu kura hou. I tukuna hoki te mana pupuri te paukara haki nei, kia Matiu Kingi o ngā puhi me tainui. Ko te pōhatu Māori hoki o taua pau whenua, kia Hinengaro Davies o Ngāti Manu me Ngāti Mahuta. O tira mā te kono hikui a mō rehu nei, no te hīkoi o tainui, a te māitai rā kena e tāpiri tahi atu. O eniki uri o ngā puhi, ko ngā manaaki a tainui.
E te moko pona, o te ropu o matakete, kia kaha.
It's become more like a message on wheels as they roll through the heart of the North Island. 2 kilometres of calm.
There have been no accidents on the road this far, and so I'm actually quite pleased that they're listening to us and we're keeping inside of the rules.
Inspector Wally Haumaha, along with 5 iwi liaison officers, have been with the hīkoi since it left Cape Reina in Northland almost a week ago. And they have witnessed the numbers climbing.
I would estimate around 5,000 as we've got to each city. Taupo today has probably been around 2.5 to 3,000.
And they expect the numbers to climb even more.
I feel that the message doesn't get through, the true message isn't ever told, so it's good that they've had the loudspeakers going and so on and telling the truth.
Police are hopeful that the rise in numbers won't mean a rise in problems. Tini Molyneux, One News.
It is not Māoridom that is ignorant about this. It is the Pākehā.
No te kawanotanga partnership, mau time, he puruhet. Na koe nei tua muli hu tera me malanga te ahuatanga ke hare pai te ahu whakamua.
E hīkoi tino whakahirahira tēnei mō tātou katoa mō te ao Māori. E hīkoi nei tātou te hīkoi. Kāre au ki e hīkoi whakamutunga engari ko tēnei te hīkoi mō tātou katoa.
Pai rau atu te hīkoi i te wairo, he tūhono ngā iwi kei te tautoko te kaupapa Ngāti Kahungunu, me te iwi huri no te motu o te takutai mōna. Pai rau atu te wairo.
Matiu, Mākoro and Moko Tuararo, I roto te whanganui a Ruawhara. Ko nei ngā kōrero ngā Pāke ko Hawke's Bay.
Po he mātou e rua te kautanga te pē, tori te kau. Engari ina pō, ka hara mai ko tahi rau tangata, ko tahi rau rima te kau tangata ki te tautoko.
Hika, kāre no tātou, kei te whawhaitono tātou kia tau iwi maha. Nā kāwanatanga, nā kaune hera o pērāori e kia rātou katoa. Engari kia o nei ko tēnei te timatanga mō tātou.
Atu I tēne ki pātū wata tawhito o te mānuka nui. No tapu ai rāwa ko te rauhina. Kua hiki nei te tapu ai o te tira haere nei o tā ki timu o rauta me nukutai me meha. I runga I te huarahi whakaihua tuana ki roto o ahuriri o tira ki hera taunga. Ai te pōnei moi ai ki kohu pāti ki marae, kai au pōpō ka takatū atu ki te ore I roto o te wairarapa. Mai hini kora tēne ki atu I te wairoa te pukorua, oro pūpū ho nenganenga matangirau o te karere.
People from 14 local marae have come together to cater for the coming guests at Raitihi's Te Puki marae. They began heating stones for the hangi this morning and the food went in early this afternoon. More than 1,000 individually wrapped dinners.
Oh, it's been a very big job, but with plenty of helpers around our iwi, it's been real good.
Bedding is also a huge challenge for the small marae, every spare space being filled with mattresses and made up for the guests. Even the tiny landmark Ratana Church is now a large bedroom.
Events we have here would probably total on the outside, if we're lucky, 300 to 500 people. We're expecting in excess of 1,000.
The name of this meeting house means unity in the truth. So when the hīkoi arrives here, everyone will be staying here, in spite of the logistics, as a symbol of unity. When the hīkoi leaves Raitihi tomorrow, they'll head for one of their biggest receptions so far at Whanganui. There, preparations began today to provide for an even larger number of people.
It's a monstrous job. We're having to make at least 12 to 1,500 hangi.
The hīkoi will be based at Whanganui's Motua Gardens, known to Maori as Pakaitori. And although the issue of land, seabed and foreshore will be the major talking point, everybody is expected to be well fed.
I'm hoping for kotahitanga. I'm hoping that all of the political parties will come together and, fight this on all fronts together.
The hīkoi will move to Ratanapa later this morning and is expected to reach Wellington on Wednesday.
Good evening. The Prime Minister has launched a scathing attack on the seabed and foreshore hīkoi heading for the capital. Helen Clark's labelling high-profile hīkoi organisers haters and wreckers. She claims they're just taking protests witnessed at Waitangi to the steps of Parliament. But while the hīkoi leaders may receive a chilly reception from the Prime Minister on Wednesday, it was a very different story for today's visitors.
Shrek the sheep getting a full Prime Ministerial welcome at Parliament today. While Helen Clark happy to roll out the welcome mat for the world-famous merino, when it came to the hīkoi, also heading for Parliament steps, it was more a matter of bar humbug.
This is the same old faces, the Ken Mears, the Harawira families, the Annette Sykes, the haters and wreckers, the people who destroy Waitangi every year, now wanting to do a Waitangi in every town in New Zealand on the way to Wellington, where they'll do a Waitangi on the front steps of Parliament. Is this not what New Zealand has got absolutely sick and tired of?
Well, I'd like to know who is the hater, actually us or her? Because we're only asking to keep what is ours.
The reality is many of the people supporting this take are conservative Māori who are concerned with this, what the government intends to do.
Why would you have the time to go and meet Shrek the sheep, but you wouldn't take the time to talk to a group of New Zealanders concerned about what's happening?
I thought Shrek was good company.
Central Wellington came to a virtual halt to witness the final stage of a 2-week journey.
Why are you not at school?
My teacher says that I'm allowed here, and I'm just here with my mum and Māori Women's Welfare League.
Rain, hail or shine, we've got to do it, don't we?
There's a lot of energy here, a lot of good vibes. I came down here wondering whether it would be aggro or not, but it's not.
Meaning a quiet time for the more than 200 police.
This is the last leg of our hīkoi when we started from the north 10 days ago, and I have to say that we've been incident-free right up until this point.
The Prime Minister made good on her promise of a no-show, but her absence did her no favours with the crowd.
Would have been nice if Helen had the balls to come and meet us, but she hasn't.
Bringing a warning from those on the street.
The Māori people are going to drop her like a hot potato.
The issue at the heart of the hīkoi will be heard in less than 24 hours. MPs will vote for the first time tomorrow on the seabed and foreshore bill. Connie Buchanan, One News.
Some MPs watched from the safety of Parliament, while others were confident enough to get right in amongst it.
Where did you watch it from?
I saw glimpses of it from the second floor.
Only glimpses?
We had a normal program running for the day. This wasn't an issue for the National Party to be involved in.
Not even for the Māori Affairs spokesperson?
No, not at all. And
why?
Well, let's answer the first question.
Okay.
And so I saw the crowd there assembling there. And what I have to say about that is that what was most impressive about that was the very orderly and constructive way in which that protest was carried out.
But are promising to be back in force when the seabed and foreshore law gets put to the vote for the first time. Fran Mould, One News.
This is 3 News with John Campbell and Carol Hirschfeld.
Kia ora, good evening. A collective sigh of relief from the government this afternoon as Tainui MP Nanaia Mahuta told Parliament she will not resign from the Labour Party. But that didn't stop her joining Tariana Turia to vote against the seabed and foreshore legislation.
Yes, after yesterday's hīkoi, a rearguard of Māori stayed at Parliament today to make the point that they were implacably opposed to the introduction of the foreshore and seabed legislation. And even though Nanaia Mahuta decided to stay with Labour, she's still a hero in Māori eyes.
I have to get you to go back behind the barrier. We can't have you all waiting here, okay? It's just there's no space up there at the moment. We're not going.
Hundreds vied for seats at Parliament today, and many were turned away. Desperate to watch the votes fall on one of our history's most controversial pieces of legislation.
Now, none of the Māori members, male members, have stood up and been counted. And I'm speaking about my own whanaunga in Tauranga, and that's Mita Ririnui. Stand up and be counted, e hoa.
The right of full, exclusive and undisturbed possession has been constantly subject to review and redefinition. And it clearly seemed to Māori people that the foreshore was part of the whenua, which under the treaty was vested in the full exclusive possession.
That would not be acceptable to the great majority of New Zealanders. That would be a recipe for massive conflict between Māori and the rest of New Zealand, or the great majority of the rest of New Zealand.
It seems to me that if a government has a choice between pacifying the majority will, when that will is based on misinformation, and being just, then it has two obligations. One is to correct the misinformation, which it has singularly failed to do, and the other is to act justly. And if a government fails to act justly, then it effectively has no right to govern.
The Crown, by saying that it is the legal and beneficial owner and that the foreshore and seabed is the Crown's absolute property, means that there is no opportunity for Māori to prove ownership as they would otherwise be entitled to do.
Most fundamentally, the legislation is a confiscation of things which the treaty says belong to Māori under the full, exclusive and undisturbed possession of our whenua. It's a confiscation of things which the common law recognises as part of our Aboriginal title. And it's a confiscation of things that under human rights norms are internationally recognised as belonging to Indigenous peoples. It's an unjust and unfair piece of legislation.
And while the politicians were busy negotiating, some iwi were down in court putting their arguments for ownership of the Whanganui and Taranaki foreshore.
A stormy day at the seashore. Whanganui and Taranaki iwi are seeking legal ownership over this land, from flooded Whangaehu in the south to Mokau north of New Plymouth.
It's about ensuring that future generations understand that we never ever gave away our rights or title to the foreshore and seabed, and never gave consent for the Crown to in any way impede and impose their processes upon us.
While they were in the Māori Land Court today, the government was confirming the court's power to grant titles will be gone by the end of the year. Some Māori say any way you look at it, the government's detailed proposals for ancestral connection and customary uses can't hide the fact they will have fundamentally fewer rights.
A lot of people talk about it as though confiscations occurred only in the 19th century. This is something that's going to occur now, and Pākehā have an excellent opportunity to ensure that it doesn't happen.
The government's foreshore and seabed legislation will be largely ignored in a part of the Eastern Bay of Plenty. The new laws will guarantee all New Zealanders access to beaches. But iwi under the mantle of Te Whānau a Apanui say they've controlled their coastal boundary for hundreds of years, and nothing will change that now.
There's no doubt about who's in charge here, and this iwi has a message for the government.
They should come to us and prove their ownership. We know they haven't got it, so no.
But politicians are a rare sight here. The iwi here hold basic foreshore and seabed rights. They plan to continue enforcing that.
We know it's ours. Other people might perceive it as this, but it's a way of us exercising our authority. So what mana moana.
Rahui works in many ways, including spiritually. More than a month ago, 2 surfers drowned here. The beach is still a no-go area for anyone.
It didn't matter whether they were pākehā or not pākehā. The same thing will still have happened. You'll still have a rāhui put down. It's out of respect to the people. I mean, the families are grieving.
It also comes at a cost for locals who earn a keep out of fishing. but they say it's a sacrifice they can live with.
I couldn't think what we'd do without it. It's our cupboard. And it'd just be really sad to have that taken from us.
But they say the government doesn't respect their wishes.
You know, if the government continues down this path, they're actually going to push us into a corner. And, you know, that's not going to be good for anybody.
And they say some visitors are also pushing their luck.
People walking through your property without the courtesy of saying, oh, I'm coming through. And it comes to our time, our generation now, we're a bit, oh, pukuriri, eh?
As a result, the signs of frustration are becoming more visible. The whānau Apanui still own 95% of their land, and their coastal boundary begins here at Hawaii in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, and it runs for 120 kilometres along the coast, all the way to Pōtaka in the East Cape. They say they have fought hard to retain their land, and they will live another day to continue that fight, regardless of any new government policy. Tani Molyneux, One News.
Hoki atu e namore hu ki te puhi kura koutou whenua ko hofoa te tū urupatu he tawhito nana mai no tawhiti he wharataua ki te mate Mate aho pea, kiko kiko, kiko kiko. E te tau I turakina, e whenua I tukarihia. Papahoro na mahara hagiri maina, ta kirikiri, ta kirikiri. Ngabo na ke te aniani ponarungaru e te tini ko huruwhiu a kini kini a kini kini moiku whera whera I te puhi ki tauni tapu I